houses that you don't want to buy in the Pacific Northwest. My name's Chris with Equity Real Estate. I help first timers buy and sell in Oregon and Southwest Washington. And the four houses you don't want to buy, number one, don't buy a house that's over 100 years old. Okay. Everyone gets this idea that it would be really cool to, bring some house back to life and it would be so much fun. And it's going to have, wraparound patio porch. It's going to, you're going to renovate it. It's going to be fantastic. Okay. It sounds really coll when they do it on HGTV or if you see videos online. It's really neat. The houses, the architecture back then and the designs, sometimes they have cool little unique features, maybe like a dumbwaiter, things like that, or laundry chutes. I mean, those are kind of cool. You can see laundry chutes in other houses. Sometimes they're kind of a safety hazard. Same with a dumbbell waiter or the dumbwaiter. And then just they're old. Okay, they've probably had some poor ownership and poor maintenance in the past. They've been around so long. Foundation issues are common. Wiring and plumbing are kind of the 2 big, like, headaches, okay? That both of them they need to be replaced at least every 50 years. So, if it's a 100-year-old house and it's been kind of, hasn't been updated, you might have, also kind of the lath and plaster for, instead of, like, normal drywall. That can be a hassle to replace or, like, patch if you're just trying to do patch jobs. And then, again, like I said, the electrical and plumbing, just don't mess with it, okay? It's gonna be a money pit most likely. There are some that have been completely renovated, someone spent a lot of money on them, and if you're looking to buy something like that, maybe it works for you, but for all other instances, avoid it, okay? Number 2, in the Pacific Northwest, we get a lot of rain, and we have a very common style of roof. Don't buy a house that's kind of against the grain, or typically what I mean by that is a flat roof, okay? Flat roofs in the Pacific Northwest on residential buildings that have the torch down membrane on top usually don't last as long or usually have problems, more or less, that's the easiest way to say it. Um, Typically, you see them on commercial buildings, kind of any type of building that's over, like, 3 stories, okay, that makes sense. And you see them a lot, they'll have 2 feet up, 3 feet up on each side, you'll have the membrane, the water goes to a specific area, and then they'll have gutters, okay? Really common for commercial, it's no problem. But in the Pacific Northwest, with the amount of rain we have, and if your roof is flat, you're probably gonna have trees around, and when, a couple times a year when we get heavy winds, it's gonna blow branches off, and even a small branch, if it gets, broken, creates kind of a spear effect, and so you can have this small branch that you wouldn't think would be a big deal for most, materials or for in most instances, and it comes down and it hits your roof and spears your roof and creates a hole in that membrane, you might be looking at an issue in the future. It's gonna slowly allow water inside over the next, 3 to 6 months of that rainy season. You're not gonna notice it in the next couple of years. It's gonna start building and building, then all of a sudden you have an issue. I've talked to home inspectors about this, and one, conversation I had a few weeks ago, it was very blunt in that he rarely sees flat roofs that don't have a problem, just because there's a reason that roofs are designed, kind of with the severe pitch typically, or at least like a certain amount of pitch, and that's to get the rainwater to fall and run off. When you have a flat roof and it has the membrane on it, it doesn't have you don't build the speed to get away, and it's not being, pushed in the right direction. So sometimes it'll just kind of sit there, and like I said, any small gap created by either poor installation or those branches falling down and spearing, that'll have a negative impact, okay? And it can just be a problem. There's a reason that we see, 95% of houses have composition roofing shingles, okay? Sometimes I was thinking sometimes you'll see, metal roofs here and there. Typically, that's also, not as seen as much, sometimes at the mountain for the snow load. That way the snow lands on it. If it builds up sooner or later, it'll get heavy enough to slide off. That's something that there's a reason that you see that up there. In those environments, you'll also rarely see composition roofs, and they can even be dangerous and, poor practices to have a composition shingle roof. on the mountainside or like in Mount Hood government camp area, anywhere that gets snow actually, because the snow builds up and the shingles, kind of grip with the granules on there. It doesn't have that natural sliding effect that a tin metal roof would have, and so the snow will build up 6, 8 feet, and all of a sudden you can actually have houses fall in. I've actually noticed people up at government camp who've had houses fall in on themselves because they had shingle composite roofs, and the snow got so heavy one year and it fell in. And I mean, what a nightmare that is, but that's another story. And then number three, you're not gonna wanna buy a house that is a single level slab on grade, okay? Again, don't see these often. Typically, it's just not done because of specific reasons. Number 1, in our environment and kind of standard building is crawl spaces. You want at least kind of that 2 or 3 feet in the bottom, crawl space, so that way airflow can happen naturally, and there's a, solid barrier for insulation, things like that. And then just more practical uses. Number 1, if it's a slab on grade, you're gonna have probably like 4 to 6 inches of concrete is gonna be that slab, and your plumbing pipes. Your pipes are gonna be in there. That's kind of all that's gonna be in there for the most part, but think about if you have a house that was slab on grade and it's built in the 60s or 70s, and all of a sudden you have, these pipes that are getting older and older and deteriorate, and the material doesn't last forever. So then you have these, pinhole leaks that start to, happen. And all of a sudden, when there's these pinhole leaks happening, the pipe itself is kind of wearing out, right? It's getting corroded. Your water flow is not gonna be as good, you just have leaks happening, and so in order to get to those pipes and to replace those pipes with probably PEX material, right, kind of a plastic material, they're gonna be tearing up the floor and, getting trenches dug out to where the pipes are, and it's gonna be a hassle, number 1. Number 2, your flooring's gone now, right? Because 'Cause let's say you've got vinyl plank throughout. Maybe it's a good reason to replace your flooring. Maybe you've got outdated flooring, and it's a win, right? The pipe goes, okay, well, I guess we get new flooring now too. Okay, great. But it's going to be an extra cost, number one. And then number two, if you have already updated flooring and now you have pinhole leaks, it's going to create problems, you know, under the slab. And then obviously, when you go to clean out the pipes and replace the pipes, you're going to have to replace that flooring. And it's tough to, really unlikely that you have a strip of vinyl plank that goes exactly where the pipe is, and you can just take one plank up and put it down. That's, impossible. It's not gonna happen like that. So, be aware of those. And then the last one is kind of common, but people don't necessarily think about it or ask enough questions sometimes. And this is homes that have been kind of fix and flip from that DIY person or someone who doesn't have really the credentials to be doing that. Sometimes we will see poor craftsmanship, and it just starts to kind of give you, you know, not necessarily the heebie-jeebies, but it starts to raise the red flags of like if they did this thing poorly. Let's say they installed the trim and things aren't lining up and it just doesn't look good. What else did they do? Halfway that, it was done, but it wasn't quite done properly or by a professional. And, maybe someone, got the idea of I want to invest in real estate and I'm going to buy this house, and they buy grandma's house, or, maybe a house that had a tax in against it, or some type of scenario where they got a good deal on it. So they invested some money into it, but they did a lot of DIY things, watched YouTube universities, I always say, and you just don't know what all was done when it comes to disclosures. They tell you, "Oh, well, I never lived there, so I don't know," whatever, and that's just not, accurate or realistic. Be very cautious of those. Okay, so again, we've got houses that are over 100 years old. We've got houses that are flat roof. Then we've got houses that are slab on grade, and then you have houses that were kind of fix and flips done by non-reputable companies. And you can look up those companies on Oregon Business Registry. Washington also has a state registry where you can get kind of more information about either contractors or just like business licenses if it was a business that owned it before you bought it. you can look into that type of stuff and, kind of try and navigate that process. But if you run into any of those scenarios, ask a lot of questions. Okay. People, when they have work done, usually they keep receipts, usually if they have information. So if you're asking questions and they just don't have a lot of responses, that's kind of a red flag. Slow down, make sure you take your time, look at the seller's disclosures, ask a lot of questions, and if you don't like the answers, you can pass. You can terminate based on that type of stuff. If you have an inspection, something pops up, you can say, "Hey, this is not the house for us." But that's not to say that any of those 4 houses might not be good scenarios. Not, I'm not looking at every house you're looking at potentially, so there might be a good deal that I'm not seeing, and maybe they, did everything perfect. The flat roof is in great shape. There's no trees around, and the plumbing was all done. All that type of stuff. Okay. So I hope this has been informative. Please like, comment, or subscribe if you've got something to add to, or if you want to know more about the market and other videos that come up in the future. I'm always trying to share more information for first timers in Oregon and Southwest Washington. And until next time, take care.